Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to another card making video. So today we've got the newest issue of Creative Stampin'. This is issue 92 and this is the free A4 stamp set that you get. So this is called All Sorts of Sport. And you can see that you've got a section there of stamps, these football ones that are made by Hunky Dory. These are for the love of stamps. So this is going to be perfect for creating cards and projects for anybody who absolutely loves sports. And then there is an additional smaller stamp set. You've got the sporting silhouettes. So you've got different characters here in the silhouette form doing different kinds of sports. So that again is going to work perfectly with the other stamps. So let's take a quick look in the magazine for the inspiration. So I did struggle with this particular stamp set. I don't know a lot of people who are kind of that into sports necessarily. So I'm not sure that this is a stamp set that I would reach for often. I do love some of the sentiments that they have got in here, and I love some of the different kinds of cards that they have created. But the one sort of big positive that I think is really great about this stamp set is the stamps themselves are actually quite big. So you can make then those bigger cards and those bigger projects. And I think they work so well together that you can see here, you can combine the stamps to make little scenes and things. Along with the sentiments, they've got twine and ribbon and extra elements in there. But yeah, the one great thing that I love about it is, like I said, the size of the stamps themselves. And again, the magazine has got some really great inspiration, and this will be perfect for anybody who does want to make cards, and again, projects for anyone who does love sports. They've got a really great variety of sports stamps within this set. Again, like nice add-ons and things, but not quite the stamp set for me. In the magazine, it does show you 4 digital stamps that you can download from the website. These are by Paper Nest Dolls. I really love these. I think the designs of them are really great, really cute. So I'm thinking that I might create a card with one of those digital stamps. We can print it and colour it in. I think that will make a really beautiful card. So let's take a quick look in next month's issue. So this stamp set is in support of Mental Health UK, which is really great. So this is about being mindful and the power of positive thinking. Again, an A4 set. These look like quite big stamps, and there is then additional paper pack with it as well. So I'm really excited. This is something a little bit different. You can do a little bit of colouring on here. You can leave it black and white. And I think you could do some really great kind of different projects with that. But for now, let's get into today's card. So like I said, this stamp set isn't quite the stamp set for me. So I did struggle a little bit sort of coming up with a card idea. But I decided to just get a little bit messy and then just do a little bit of stamping on top of that. Not so much with kind of colouring the images in. So I've working on my glass mat, but I decided then to take the extra sort of messy sheet that they've got that can go over that sort of palette section to the left hand side. So I'm just working on that because I find that it beads up the ink a lot better. So I've smushed in some of the inks and I just spritzed it with a bit of water and then literally just smushed my cardstock into it. So the card that I am using, this is the Crafter's Companion watercolour cardstock. So this is going to be great for these kind of techniques. It did kind of peel a little bit at the end, but by then I was kind of happy with how it looked, so it didn't really bother me too much. But the colours that I'm using, so I've got the Spun Sugar, I've got the Shaded Lilac, and then I used that Worn Limp lipstick. So I didn't end up using the Victorian Velvet colour. But I did then get out one of my Prism ink pads, and that was sort of more of a purple shade, just to kind of, you know, add a little bit more colour in there, because I felt like the Spun Sugar and Shaded Lilac, that ended up being quite light in comparison to the other colours are quite deep. But all I did was just smushed it in, used my heat gun and then a paper towel just to dry it and take up some of the pooling ink. And then just sort of pick the different colours and try to get kind of the different areas that I wanted to have that colour in. So super easy to create. Really didn't take very long. The longest thing is just the drying time in between. You could leave this to be a little bit more natural, not have those harsher lines that I've got, but I actually really love that in these kind of backgrounds, is to have that sort of heavier bit of colour, just where you get that bigger pooling of that coloured ink. I really love creating backgrounds like this because not two backgrounds are going to come out exactly the same. They're all going to be different, and it's never going to be wrong. You can let it dry. You could then do the whole process again and add more ink to different areas. So you can see that a lot of this is kind of concentrated in the middle. I haven't gone right to the edges. I really like that in the background, but if you didn't like that, you could then wait for it to completely dry and go back in with more colours. So for the card itself, we're just going to do some basic stamping in some black ink over this background. So this is going to be a really great technique if you want to sell your cards, if maybe, well, when you can have parties again, maybe if you was having like a football themed party or generally a sports themed party, you could use these for some invitations. So this is a really great quick way of creating multiple cards. You could get an A4 sheet of cardstock and create backgrounds like this and then just cut it down, and then you could make a couple of cards from that. What I'm doing here is quite basic, like I said, but that's really great if you want quick cards just to throw something together. You're not sort of too worried about it being perfect, because I do find that Copic colouring or alcohol colouring can be quite time consuming, especially if you do use the multiple obviously colours. If you've got the 3 shades of colours in there, it can take quite a long time. If you are duplicating cards and things, it can be a much longer process. So sort of finding designs where you can mass produce a lot quicker with a lot less effort is always it's always something good to have sort of in your back pocket. So the first image I've stamped is this kind of coat rack stamp. So I think this is great. You could use this for so many different kinds of cards. This would be great maybe for like a new home card if you had other stamps, maybe some coats or something like that you could kind of hang from it. I think you could use this in quite a versatile sort of way. But what we're going with the design for this card is we're going to hang just a couple of these ballet slippers. So you can see that I've stamped one of them a little bit lower, and what I'm going to do is stamp then the bow as well, coming down so they look like they're hanging up. So I wanted to have them kind of at different lengths, just to give that a little bit more interest. So like I said, next I'm going to stamp this kind of bow image here. So I'm using the Memento Tuxedo black ink. So it's not going to matter if I overlap these images. I'm not doing any masking or anything like that, because you're not going to notice if they are kind of overlapping each other. But I've placed this so it looks like it's going to be hanging, and then it's long enough where it is going to look like it's hanging those ballet slippers. So what you could do is you could stamp or colour in the same colour with this ribbon and the bow as the slippers. Again, it will all look like sort of one piece. For this second one, because it's a much shorter gap, what I'm going to do is get my placement. I'm going to work out how much of this stamp I actually want to ink up, and I'm only going to ink up a certain way. So I don't want the whole length of this. I only want sort of the top section, and you can see, so I'm just working out how much of it I want to ink up, and then I can pop that down so it's going to be the right length for me. So I do end up quite liking the design of this card. I think it's quite simple, but like I said before, it has got that really nice sort of interesting background. But now we've got that all stamped, so I have left this just to kind of dry a little bit, just to one side, and now we're going to trim it down. So I'm actually going to make a 5 by 5 inch card. So I'm just going to trim this down to be then first of all 5 by 5, so it's going to be the perfect size of the card. I'm not going to mat and layer it, but of course I still want to have that white border, and then I can go ahead and really trim this down to 4 3/4 inch, but I want to see where I want to take that size off. So I took the remainder off the bottom, and then I'm just trimming a little bit off both of the sides, just so then I can still get my image to be sort of in the center. So normally I would finish my card panel before I attach it to my card. So I think I wasn't really planning to do any more. I know that I was going to create a separate sentiment strip and that I was going to pop on with some foam pads. So I went ahead and just glued down, using the tape pen, my card panel onto my blank card. I did end up then adding a few more stamps on here, so it would have been better had I not done this. But I did at this point think that I was kind of finished with the background. But what I really love about this is having then that small white border around the edge. Like I said, it just gives it just gives it a little bit more interest, because you do have that strong sort of colourful background, and then you do have just those black outlined images. But I decided that my sentiment wasn't going to be very big. I couldn't really fit on one of the sentiments that was in this stamp set free with this magazine. So I knew I was going to have a much smaller sentiment, but I thought the background could maybe just do with something a little bit extra just to make it that much more interesting. Like I said, maybe if I was mass producing these, I might just leave it as it is, possibly. But I decided just to use another of the stamps that came through. So I've taken one of the silhouette dancers. So this is the ballet silhouette stamp here. I popped it onto an acrylic block, and I'm just going to stamp this in the background. So I didn't want to have anything too strong, so I did start off with the pink jelly bean, but it was really too light, you couldn't see it at all. So I decided then to go with the mauve colour, and this just stood out a little bit more. So again, it was just kind of building up that background, and all I did was just stamp it in different places on the background itself, again, just to add something a little extra to the background. So hopefully you'll be able to kind of see this on camera. I'm just moving the ballet dancer around, but it's so subtle in that background that I really do love it. So obviously, if you're still planning to add stamps and things to your card panel, obviously it's a good idea to not attach it to your card first if it's going to come over the edge. So all I did just to help this is I just took some purple tape, and I just then put those over the corners just to protect that white border, and then I stamped the image. So I did come off camera just a little bit there, but you can see then that I'm just sort of stamping these randomly in the background. And like I said, nothing is kind of popping out too much where it's really distracting from anything else. So the last thing for this card is the sentiment. So like I said, I couldn't pick one from this free stamp set, so I actually picked a sentiment that come from the latest issue of Simple Cards and Papercraft, and I believe that was issue 213. So that was the Tranquil Tulips, and so this is just a really simple hello, and it's got 3 dots after it. So I have heat embossed this with some white embossing powder onto some black cardstock. So you've just seen me heat set that there. And I'm going to trim this down to be a longer panel. So I am just taking then my mini guillotine, and I'm going to cut this into, like I said, a long sort of sentiment strip here. I just want to note that I'm not in camera. It's because I've actually moved my camera slightly, and I've moved then my glass mat. So whereas before I was used to working down sort of towards the bottom of the mat, now I need to be a little bit further up. So apologies that it's not sort of all in camera. And then I just cut that again using the guillotine, the end at the angle, again just to add a little bit of interest. So that's going to come in from the right hand side at the bottom. So I didn't want to cover kind of too much of those ballet slippers, but I think this kind of works perfectly because there's not really a lot going on. Again, it's not a busy sentiment, it's not got lots of different font on it, it's just a really basic word sentiment here, and I think it goes really great with that. So I'm just trimming this down a little bit just because I don't want it to go too far over the card. So I want it to get to just over halfway. And then I'm going to use some foam pads to attach this to the card just to add a little bit of dimension. So I do really love how this card came out. As I've obviously said a couple of times, isn't quite the stamp set for me that I think I'm going to use tons. But I do really like how this one came out. It's really simple, but I think it's got enough kind of interest to make it into a good card. The only extra thing that I did off camera was I just added a couple of those 3D drops like I have done in my previous videos. I just used a clear one for that, just again to add a little bit of finishing touches to the card itself. So that is the finished card for today's video. So again, this was the Creative Stampin' issue 92, and this is all sorts of sports stamp set. So if you did like this video, then please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so you don't miss out on any future videos. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.